A UN committee has recommended that Australia's Great Barrier Reef be added to a list of World Heritage Sites that are in danger. UNESCO says the climate crisis is steadily destroying the world's largest reef, but its recommendations have prompted outrage from the Australian government. Angela Murphy finds out why.
The Great Barrier Reef spans nearly 345,000 square kilometres. The vital marine ecosystem off Australia's northeast coast is home to more than 1,500 species of fish and 400 types of coral. But the climate crisis has placed the reef's long-term survival in doubt. UNESCO, the UN's cultural body, says it should be placed on a list of World Heritage Sites that are in danger at a meeting next month.
The decision refers to a lot of Australian government reports. It's based on the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority's Outlook report. In 2019, the Australian government found that the future outlook for the reef is very poor. They downgraded that outlook from poor to very poor.
But Canberra strongly opposes UNESCO's recommendation.
I will stand up in any community, and I do, and say that we have the best managed reef in the world, the gold standard, and no one has contradicted me yet. So this decision was flawed. Clearly there were politics behind it. Clearly those politics have subverted a proper process.
The Australian government suspects current UNESCO chair China may have influenced the decision amid long-running tensions between the two countries. But Beijing has rejected suggestions the decision was political.
Just like some Australians who've always been biased in their ideology and have spread lies and misinformation about China, the allegation is groundless.
If the reef is downgraded, it'd be the first time a natural World Heritage Site is placed on the in danger list due to the climate crisis. The designation would help with conservation efforts, as it would unlock extra funds. But it could also affect the reef's tourism, an industry worth billions of dollars before the pandemic. Environmental groups say UNESCO's decision highlights that Australia isn't doing enough to tackle the climate crisis.
Our Great Barrier Reef has experienced 3 mass bleaching events in the last 5 years that have killed more than half of the corals on the reef. And we've had umpteen warnings from global bodies, from Australian scientists about the reality, which is that there is no future for the reef if we cannot rapidly reduce our emissions.
Australia is reluctant to commit to stronger climate action. The country is a major exporter of coal and gas and has repeatedly ignored calls to target zero carbon emissions by 2050. Angela Murphy, TRT World.
Ariane Wilkinson is the Great Barrier Reef Program Manager at WWF-Australia. She has more on the implications of UNESCO's recommendation.
If the Great Barrier Reef is added to the list of World Heritage in danger, it means that the World Heritage Committee can make the decision to list it there under the Convention, and it's sending a message to Australia in the strongest terms possible that they will need to act on climate and improve their action on water quality if they want to make sure that the World Heritage listed Great Barrier Reef doesn't lose its World Heritage listing. So it's basically one of the strongest signals that UNESCO can possibly send to Australia.
And is this what's shocking the Australian government then?
Well, it may be, but to be honest, there's been a decade of concern raised with the Australian government through IUCN and UNESCO, both with respect to water quality, but also with respect to climate change. So there's certainly very clear standards for listing the Great Barrier Reef as in danger under the Convention and under the operational guidelines. So I would say that this decision shouldn't necessarily be seen as surprising, especially when you take into account the fact that the Australian government's policies on climate are well below our fair share for protecting the Great Barrier Reef and our fair share for holding global warming to 1.5 degrees. It's really concerning to see this these kind of comments coming out. It's a good process. The IUCN and UNESCO write the draft decision. The World Heritage Committee members can then consider it. They don't have an opportunity to have input into these draft decisions until that time. The process has been fair, and I think what Australians really want is for the Australian government to look at the recommendation of UNESCO and IUCN and take it seriously. We're really not doing enough on climate to protect the Great Barrier Reef, which is our duty, and that's what should be the focus of this particular dialogue. It shouldn't be baseless allegations that this is some kind of other political play by other countries. It's just not correct. Ideally, we'd like to see the Australian government listen to the scientific recommendations, put in place a climate policy that's aligned with 1.5 degrees, and therefore become a leader on climate change. That could perhaps be something which could hold back this decision of having the Great Barrier Reef listed on as a property that's in danger. Australia has an opportunity to become a global leader in terms of our response to climate change. We have everything at our fingertips here to become a renewable energy export superpower and drive down emissions domestically and globally. So that's what we'd like to see, because we certainly can fight climate change, protect the Great Barrier Reef in a way that's really good for our economy.